that's what you need, isn't it?
October the 20th is an early staging post in a campaign for a serious economic alternative to the nonsense that we're suffering in this country at the present time. And it's not just this country, it's all around Europe, indeed all around the world. Outside you'll see there's this booklet available. It's of the Solidarity delegation that went to Greece earlier this year. I was supposed to be on that delegation. I couldn't go on it because I wanted to be in Parliament to vote against benefit cuts, and I'm sure you would have agreed with me on doing that. And so I went later on my own as a sort of one-person delegation to meet unions and many other activists there in Greece. And I found it actually quite frightening, the way in which all the certainties of a society, education, health, a degree of welfare, provision, all those kind of certainties just gone. And every conceivable thing being put up for sale by the government at the behest of the European Central Bank. Every road, every railway, every port, every national park. And I had a actually very sad meeting with a lot of people in what is quite incredible archaeological museum in Athens. They were frightened that they were going to be privatised or sold off. The national assets, that is the ones that weren't stolen by the French, German, Spanish and British museums over the past couple of hundred years. But the Greek people are fighting back. And they're fighting back against this, against the imposition of the austerity, and against the whole narrative behind it. Because the whole narrative behind it is cut public expenditure. Somehow or other, that will mean that they will access the loans from the European Central Bank in order to pay the loans back to the European Central Bank. So it's a bit like having a Barclay card and then borrowing another credit card to pay off the Barclay card, and then you end up with Wonka paying off the credit card to pay off the Barclay card. Are you with me? And you see where all this ends up. In Kelsa-Breeze, in the meantime, the whole Greek economy is going rapidly downhill. Youth unemployment is 40–50%, adult unemployment 25%, and there are frightening numbers of people hanging around in the poorer areas of Athens with absolutely nothing to do. Rather like the pictures that we've all seen of the 1930s in the United States and the 1930s all over this country, and indeed in this city and in Sunderland and all over the northeast of what went on in the 1930s at that time. That is what's now happening in Greece. Now, alternatives appear during a recession. The one alternative is a left alternative of controlling the banking system, of having a banking system that operates on the basis of the needs of the people rather than the needs of those that make a great deal out of that banking system. Or the other alternative is the one to round on an appropriate minority, blame them for everything, and you then bring in an authoritarian state which protects the very wealthiest and very richest people. It happened against the Jewish people, against gays, against trade unions in Nazi Germany, or in Germany before the Nazis came during the Weimar Republic. And I just picked up a slight whiff of the Weimar Republic during my visit to Athens. I'm there in the centre of Athens late at night, well, not that late, and a group of young men turn up on motorbikes, all dressed in black leathers. Very intimidating, get off and start abusing any African people that happen to be in the vicinity. They've now developed this art form into beating up people, into burning shops, into destroying people's lives. It's the growth of a brown shirt brigade in Greece at the present time. And New Dawn are very well funded. They are respected, in quotes, by some of the media in Greece, and they are presenting themselves as an alternative. This is the underbelly of what happens in the austerity program all across Europe. A left alternative, and at the same time there is this fascist alternative that's been brought out on the streets of places. And so when we get into debate, in some of the media in this country about the problem of immigration within our society, the problem of societies and all that. That is where it leads us to. It is not a solution to anything to blame minorities. The solution to everything is a sense of community, strength and solidarity with all those that are suffering, not blaming those that are suffering for the suffering that they're going through and the rest of us are all going through at the same time. It's a sense of unity that we need, and I think that is an extremely important message, and let's make sure it gets through on the 20th and in the run-up to the 20th. A lot of the gains that the public sector had made in the past and made a small number of people extremely rich. If we continue down the road we're going in this country, the debt may or may not be paid off by 2016, 2018, 2020, 2022, name your date. The end of it, on this process, we'll have an NHS, sort of, as a health service of last resort, run by agencies on behalf of the government for minimal care arrangements. The public who can afford it will be encouraged into the private sector. Ditto education. Ditto every other public service. Public services will be the services of last resort, not of universal availability, which we've all grown up with and all understand and accept. And so we have to go back to some very, very basic arguments. But I want to conclude with this thought about benefits. How many in this room read the Daily Mail? Well, secretly, privately. I mean, you look over somebody's shoulder, you read on the bus, you know? Nobody.
I read for information.
For information, yes, an honest man. Yes.
I look at the pictures.
You look at the pictures, okay, we're getting two people. So you know what I mean when there's this daily diatribe, which then feeds into all the other media, that apparently anyone who's on housing benefit, income support, any kind of disability benefit is basically a scrounger. They don't deserve it, they're basically a scrounger, and they've got to be dealt with. And every young person sleeps till the middle of the afternoon, picks up a benefit later on and spends the evening in a pub. Never even thinks about doing anything else in their life. It's complete codswallop, utter nonsense and deeply offensive. On the back of that, we're now in the midst of the most massive benefit cuts. We've had the ATOS interviews, which are going on, and I have people coming to see me who are just stressed beyond belief by the ATOS interview they've been through, particularly if they've got mental health difficulties. Usually, but not always, they win an appeal, but they go through the most horrible stress in the process and horrible poverty in the process. Likewise, people with physical disabilities also. And in my area, and yours as well I'm sure, the effect of the housing benefit cap on deciding what is an affordable private sector rent for someone on housing benefit is having a devastating effect. I did my normal advice bureau last Friday, and it lasted 6.5 hours. Most of the people that came in were private sector tenants who had been told what their level of housing benefit was going to be, and told their landlord had helpfully put their rent up, and they were told to pay the difference from the rest of their benefits. So if you've got an income support of £70 a week, it's very hard to pay £80 a week towards your rent, because the maths obviously doesn't work. And so what happens? They get moved out of, in my case, inner London areas to the edges of London. If that doesn't work, they go to Birmingham, they go to Stoke-on-Trent, and there's a Tory MP for Bournemouth who's very alarmed at the number of Londoners that are turning up in Bournemouth and apparently causing mayhem, and he wants them all sent back to London. I pointed out to him that in fact the only people sending claimants to Bournemouth were 5 Tory-controlled London boroughs, so I directed him to talk to his mates in his own party about this. But the whole thing is not saying, hang on, if there's a family in desperate housing stress, the local authority doesn't have enough properties to house them and puts them in the private sector, and the rent is very high and the housing benefit isn't enough to meet it. Well, there's another way of looking at that. I am not in favour of wasting billions of pounds unnecessarily on housing benefit any more than anybody else is in this room. look at it the other way, control the private sector rents and ensure proper conditions in those places rather than punishing the people that are forced into that system in the first place. Now this is only phase one of the benefit reforms that Ian Duncan Smith is trying to bring in. The next one is the overall benefit cap and universal credit, which will have a dreadful effect on a very large number of people, make an awful lot of people very, very poor, and their conditions of life much worse, and therefore health and all the other things that people want to achieve in life much worse. So, on our march on October the 20th, it is about working conditions, it is about trade union rights, it is about benefits, it is about disability, it is about building more housing, it is about investment in infrastructure and industry. It is not about another programme of cuts, more attacks on trade unions, more attacks on the poor, and more attacks on those that are in the most vulnerable position within our society. We've got to relearn all the campaigns that our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents argued for. A society where you provide on the basis of need, not privilege, where you invest in people's needs through housing, through railways, through health service, through education, and all those things. And you don't treat the public sector as a great big cash machine which these spiff companies can siphon money out of, because that is the way the public sector has gone, partly through New Labour and certainly through what this government is doing at the present time. The Coalition of Resistance was formed to unite people. Understanding what is happening across the rest of Europe is not that different to what's happening here. It might be worse by degree in Spain, Italy, Greece, Portugal, Ireland, but the principle is the same one, that a European Central Bank imposing conditions which are austerity, misery for the poor, and enriching the very wealthiest within our society. The only cut I would want to make is no replacement for the Trident nuclear missile system, bring the troops out of these ghastly foreign wars we've got involved in, and cut the amount of money we spend on armaments and invest it in people and in the needs. We have formed a coalition of resistance to unite people. We've been very successful in doing that. We're holding these kind of meetings all over the country, and we're mobilising like never before for October the 20th. We've all got to be there. But on October the 21st and every day after that, we've got to continue this campaign. Don't think this government is as certain, as strong, and as powerful as it thinks it is. I used to think these people must be really confident. And then they decided to sell off the Forestry Commission forests. And I thought, wow, what are they doing that for? And then Facebook email campaign started up, and I overheard Tory MPs saying, Christ, I've had 1,000 emails about forests. What am I supposed to say to them? 4 days later, the whole policy was dropped. The whole thing was completely changed. I'm not pretending it's going to be as easy as that to push over the whole austerity programme. But if you're persistent and you stick at things, the moral high ground returns and you remain there. Those that fought on the Guildford 4, the Birmingham 6, on Hillsborough for justice showed that at the end of the day you can unite people and you can win something. Let's try and defeat the benefit cap. Let's try and defeat universal credit, defeat the housing benefit cuts. Let's defeat them on what is a centrepiece of the kind of society they want to live in. From that we can win on health, we can win on education, and we can win on so many other things. We are very strong when we're united and together. That's how we achieve things. Thank you very much.